Alright, all you graveyard shift racers out there, welcome back to Under the Radar. And this week's Stunts of the Week goes to none other than Las Vegas with their said stunt Faggio backflip, and also goes to one of the stunts from A66 Balrar with their stunt Wow. And the reason why we picked these two stunts, and technically 12 if you're counting them, is because first of all, the first stunt, anybody who's able to do a backflip with a Faggio with the limited amount of speed they have to offer with little to no room for error, is definitely A-worthy for mentioning during this said show. And the reason why in the world we picked one of A666 Balrog's stunts, it's because he was able to do a gyroscope land on all four wheels like a glove, and was able to do so in the midst of traffic. Unheard of in the wild world of stunts. And speaking of doing things that are unheard of, folks, I think it's time for us to get ready to rev our engines and check out what sort of crazy tracks we can find for this week for another edition of the GTA Online Top 5 Tracks of the Week. And the first track that we have up comes from the creator Skull God's Face with their said stunt Skull Coliseum. And I have to say this much right now, this track with the spin cycle they included during this, and that's one of the reasons why in the world this track made it in for the tracks of the week for this week, but the checkpoint madness that is in this said track is probably one of the coolest ones we've seen today. And the only tip of advice we have for you crazy track racers out there for this said track is to make sure you don't get lost in that big oversized Skull Coliseum, because you could lose your place in first place by missing a checkpoint very easily when you're inside that thing. So while you're riding on the walls or sailing on the ground, make sure you pay attention to the points where the checkpoints are to keep your first place dominance during this said race. And you should be able to win, because I'm not sure your opponents is going to figure their way out of it. Or they might. And the next track that we have up comes from the creator Genopia with his said track G Chumash Speedway. And this track, the reason why we picked it for this week, not only because it reminds us of, I guess, a toboggan-like track, and not to mention the speed and adrenaline you can get during this said track is absolutely insane. It's definitely a cool track. And not to mention a track that you can fly off of if you're not paying attention. So the only tip of advice we have for you track racers out there for this extreme bank deposit like track is to make sure you're paying attention while you're racing on it. Because if you don't, let's just say you will fly right off the track and explode like I did. And also, if you have those friends who like to try to knock you off the said track, make sure you stay on the inside of it while you're banking your way to the finish line for the said track as well. Because if you don't, once again, the explosion that happened to me, it can happen to you during this race. So be careful. And the next track that we have up comes from the creator Genopa with his said track G Tatooine Bay Circuit. And hopefully we said the name of that track right, one, and two, at this point, and I'm starting to agree with what the maestro said right about nowish, if this keeps up, Genopa is going to end up winning the Indie Award for Creator of the Year for the second year in a row. Ugh. And the reason why in the world we decided to pick this crazy track for this week, because not only it gives you every option under the board with the exception of utility and the vehicles that are featured with weapons on them at a moment's notice, but it also gives you an option to check out the beautiful scenic view and even an underwater cave that is featured during the said race. Or at least a cave that is in the water that you can race inside of, that's near one of the places you have to do for a mission, I think for Madrazo or for Ron. Not too entirely sure which one of them, but it's a mission spot that I got a feeling you would definitely love to see in race-like form. And a track that is slowly but surely starting to remind me of Ridge Racer once again. Most likely the expert track for this week. Yeah. And the only tip of advice we have for you guys and gals out there who wants to take on this beautiful scenic-like track is to make sure you don't get lost in the scenery, because you can get bumped off the edge at a moment's notice. So pay attention. And the next track that we have up comes from the creator Boots Capolos 1 with his said track Summer Colors 2. And Maestro said, boy, you are a sucker for sequels when it comes for tracks during the tracks of the week. And he's right. And the reason why in the world we decided to pick this track for this week is not only because it has a consequence to it depending on which path you decide to take, but also he decided to update this track for this week and just in enough time for it to be a part of the tracks of the week, and gives you a chance to pick your supercar of your choice to speed through this track as fast as you can, with a couple of loop-de-loops along the way as a warning. And the only tip of advice we have for you race fans out there is be careful on the loops, and also be careful inside of the tubes, because if you're not paying attention, you will fly off this track and hit to the city streets below, which will cost you that winner's purse of first place. And I don't want to see you guys losing out there, so be careful. And the last but not least track that we have up for this week comes from the creator RB Driftin', nice name by the way, with their said track Rainbow Road. Oh, even a nicer name for the track too. Nothing unsettling when you hear a name of the track like that. And this track, which gives you the option of picking every car across the board for this modified version of a Rainbow Road track that you will be in a lot of pain if you try to race down it. Let's just say there is a bit of an advantage during this said track that if you're lucky enough and crazy enough, you can actually skip out on trying to race against your opponent down the zigzags by using a center boost that he included during this race. Now, I said if you're lucky enough to get it, which I think it's easier said than done, and the only tip of advice I have for you fans out there, if you're crazy enough, is to go for that center pad to avoid all the nonsense that are right and left of you during this track heading down checkpoint 7. And if you're able to do that, there's a high possibility you can win this race. And not to mention, if you're on motorcycles, don't try to do any backflips if you're going over it, because the track is crazy enough as is. It doesn't need any of your Evel Knievel antics during this said track. And I'm just saying this to my future self when I play this race again, most likely after we go off the air. And if you guys want to check out any of these cool tracks that we liked for this week, plus other tracks we included in a giant playlist for you fans out there for this week, you can head on over to the socialclub.rockstargames page, only known as socialclub.rockstargames.com, and look up the playlist we decided to entitle for this week, The Wonder Jump. And we were going to add part 1, but it couldn't fit. But trust me, this is part 1 out of part 2 that will conclude as of next week. And with that said, folks, wraps it up for another edition of the GTA Online Top 5 Tracks of the Week. And with that said, we might as well head back to the music, and when we return, we'll be back with the final segment for Under the Radar for this week, right after this. So don't touch that dial just yet, folks, and stay tuned.